to talk about the Kaddish a little bit. The Kaddish occupies a very unique place in our liturgy. I think it's the prayer we say the most often. Just tonight, we'll say the Kaddish 3 different times in 3 slightly different forms. We'll say the half, the full, and the mourner's Kaddish. And it is a prayer that brings us together. It's one of the few prayers we can only say in the presence of a minyan of 10. Yet, in my experience, it's one of the prayers whose meaning we think least about. It's generally said by the leader, sometimes said by mourners. It's generally not said collectively. We know it so well that our responses are pretty automatic, and the prayer is written in Aramaic, which never helps any of us, even those of us fluent in Hebrew. Admittedly, the Kaddish is prime territory for a mid-service zone-out. So I wouldn't blame you if you didn't notice that the Chatzi Kaddish that Alex said before we started our silent Amidah was a little bit different this evening. Alex added an extra word. Actually, he repeated the word le'ela. And please don't get the wrong idea. This was not a slip on his part. We all know better than to assume that. But this is an addition for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the 8 days in between, where that particular line of the Kaddish transforms from God who is blessed is truly beyond all acknowledgement and praise to become God who is blessed is truly far beyond all acknowledgement and praise. Which is to say, it really doesn't change the prayer very much. Essentially, we are sneaking in a little extra flattery and sweet talk towards God in this season of supplication. But because of this addition of one extra word, there's a second, even smaller adjustment to the Kaddish. The next words of the phrase, min kol, meaning all, becomes mikol, a contraction of the 2 words that doesn't change their meaning at all. And before I risk losing anyone to the fine points of Hebrew or English grammar, this is the equivalent of changing is not to isn't. But there is no substantive difference between min kol and mikol. So what exactly gives? To answer that question, we need to move from grammar to math. In this section of the Kaddish, starting with Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach, that's the regular tune, not the high holiday tune, until the end, there are exactly 28 words. This corresponds with the 28 human experiences listed in the famous section in Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, attributed to King Solomon. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. I imagine most of you know the rest. Turn, turn, turn by the birds made it even more famous than King Solomon did. Now, some of you may be thinking at this point that this sounds like some creative word counting and at most a nice coincidence, which as far as I'm concerned is fine. We draw plenty of meaning in our lives from coincidence. And I think that there are 2 very important messages for us in this connection between the Kaddish and Ecclesiastes. The first is that change does not happen in a vacuum. If we want to add something to our lives, we will likely need to take something else away, and vice versa. Let's take the favorite rabbinic repentance example of Lashon Hara, evil or destructive speech. If you want to set a goal for yourself this year of restraining from harmful speech, for example, withholding from gossiping or spreading rumors, that's great. The rabbis would give you a big round of applause. I would give you a big round of applause. However, without a positive plan of action, refraining from any harmful patterns you've established won't be easy. You may need to work to fill that hole in your mind, to fill that hole in your social interactions with something equally meaningful, perhaps a mindfulness practice or an effort to offer more compliments. You can't subtract without adding somewhere else. And as we set our minds on what we might want to change in the year ahead, what we may want to add or subtract, or add and subtract, we need to remember that number 28, that the passage from Ecclesiastes encompasses the entirety of our human experience. We come together on these days of awe to engage in honest and open self-reflection and self-evaluation. That needs to reflect every facet of our lives, the good, the bad, and the ugly, or in the slightly modified words of King Solomon, the times to weep, the times to laugh, the times to mourn, and the times to dance. The Kaddish, this communal prayer that we include in every service multiple times, may be just the ticket to keep us grounded in that fullness of our human experience, the highs and lows of the year just past, and the hopes and anxieties of the year about to begin. In just a moment, we'll turn to page 19 and continue with the full Kaddish, appropriately enough. Feel free to follow along, to space out for a moment, to count to 28, or to take the moments of the Kaddish as an unexpected opportunity to appreciate the fullness of your own life.